Well, we're almost at that hour. Thank you for those of you who already got on board. We'll wait just a few minutes. Well, not a few minutes, just a few seconds as people are ramping up. They're quickly logging in. I think we're going to have a pretty good turnout tonight. So I want to, for those of you who are already on, I want to thank you for taking your time this evening to hang out with me here in the Bryan & Bryan Inspections office and the kind of the IB headquarters. A little heads up, we've already had a number of questions that have come in, which we're going to touch on a little bit later and tell you about those. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of toggling. We're right at that time. All right. Hey, everybody. How are we looking, Kari?
Looking good. You're showing up.
All right. Well, listen, I want to really thank every single one of you for showing up with us tonight.
Actually, we have to do a little work on Facebook Live.
Okay. We have for those of you who saw my announcement yesterday, and we've been letting people know that we're going to have this conversation tonight. And tonight is the first time we've ever had kind of an open question and answer. But interestingly, IEB has been around for only 15 months. And one of the big questions that we have is exactly what is IEB? And alongside of that is what is this, we always talk about IEB, it's the new conversation in the inspection industry. What exactly is that new conversation? Because in reality, there's very, very little that's new under the sun. And so what I want to do is just take about 2 or 3 minutes and tell you about what IEB is, but it requires me to go back in time just a little bit and explain how IEB came about. And first, let's start with the inspection industry. Now, sitting with us tonight, I don't know how many are long-term veterans in this business. How many of you are absolutely brand new to our industry? But we've been around, my company's been around for 25 years. So there's some really old timers. I don't like to look at myself as an old timer, but for many of you sitting out there, I am. And I've kind of been a part of the evolution from the kind of, I call it the 3 phases of the inspection industry evolution. The first phase was the technician-driven home inspector. And that was when the industry started, a guy or a gal with a trade and a truck, and he started inspecting houses or looking at components for friends of theirs, and then it evolved into an industry. And that went along for a number of years, and then probably about 20 years ago, there was a kind of a real breakthrough. And I call this the marketing phase, the marketing phase of evolution in the inspection industry. And it was really transcendent. We began entering a period of time where we understood and started to understand how we get the value of our product and our service into the marketplace where we become referable. And that had a huge impact on so many inspectors and the ability to really create a livelihood for themselves outside of a kind of a part-time gig of inspectors. And with that, it started to build this momentum of people who succeeded at that began to add 1 or 2 additional inspectors to work alongside them under their umbrella. And about 5 years ago, for me, a guy who had gone from the technician evolution as a guy in a truck and operated as a sole proprietor for 10 years. And then I added another inspector, the next phase or the next evolution of the inspection industry. And that is the business building phase. Now, the funny thing is we tend to, as technicians, not either downplay or not even acknowledge the fact that we are actual business owners. And I think the reason we think that way is because most of the time we're wearing a technician hat. We always have our technician hat on. And so we don't consider the time or the energy we put into the back end of either answering phones or the pricing or even some of the low-level marketing or high-level marketing, and all these things that are required to keep us busy doing the technician stuff of our business. So, as my company grew and I was kind of forced to deal with health issues, to external forces where I personally couldn't do inspections anymore, I actually took my inspector hat off, my technician hat off, and put my business owner hat on. And I became very purposeful about building out a legitimate services company that focuses on real estate inspections or home inspections. When I became very focused on that, we transitioned from being a three-man operation in 2013 to a multi-million-dollar operation in 2018. And it was a transformative, not only for me, but for the people within my organization. So that leads us to, what is IEB about? So we took, my experience, my background a little bit, but now let's look at this in general for the industry. As I began to experience this, I've got friends in the industry literally from coast to coast. And so this concept of IEB began to percolate when I hired a business consultant. I hired a business coach. And his name is Dirk Van Reenen, and he had a really amazing reputation, and he had launched his own individual coaching and consulting business here in the township in which I work, just outside of Houston. And we worked together, and just there was, even though we had some success, there was just an amazing transformation of my business to even a higher level of success. And in our relationship, we realized, you know what? There is no conversation like this within the inspection industry. There's a tremendous amount of talk on technical training. There's some amazing organizations for technical training, access to technical training. There's some access into talking about different ways of doing marketing and running routes and that kind of thing, if that's what you want to do. And there's service providers out there where you can buy, kind of these add-on services like warranties and other things that some people have really leveraged to great success within their business. But those are components. Those are pieces of a business. And if you only have one or two pieces of a business, you are ultimately going to fail. And that's what happened. I began to have more and more inspection company owners, multi-inspector firms with anywhere from 2 to 7 or 8 inspectors coming into my office, and they were just fantastic technicians, and they'd done all this marketing stuff that they had learned how to do, but they had no profitability, no balance in their life, no actual structure of a business model. And I had two business owners literally in my office break down crying, saying, "Why am I doing this? There's no joy for me. There's no excitement. With each and every year, I'm further and further detached from the reason I got into business originally, which is for time freedom, to be in control of my own destiny, make my own decisions, all the things that we dream about as business owners." Well, without an actual business model, your business begins to encapsulate you, and your business begins to absorb you. And finally, it begins to consume you. And for those of you who are new to this business, you probably haven't experienced that yet. For some of you have had great success as a sole proprietor, and the demands of the success of your business are starting to tax you. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So the new conversation in the inspection industry is how you build a better life, a purposeful life, through proven systems, processes, and models of profitability and leadership development within your organization to build the business that you envision for yourself, and a life for yourself, and a life for your employees. And that's what we're here tonight. Is I've got some great questions that have already been sent to me that are kind of the standard questions I get all the time in IEB. And so I want to dive into some questions, and feel free to get on chat. I apologize, I'm the blind inspector. Michael messed me too. Reload, got it. Okay. Go back to email link and restart. Good now. Okay. Yeah. For those of you who had trouble, we had a little bit of trouble on the Facebook live with one of our cameras here. I think it was my phone actually. So for those of you, I want to go through, and I've got a list here. I downloaded some of the questions, and there are a lot of different questions, but some of them have kind of the same theme. But what I love about these questions is they were very thoughtful, and they were very consistent in what we see in the inspection industry. So let's start with a really meaty question. And what I love about these, is all these questions kind of go to the heart of processes, systems, and models. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these questions and filter them through the process of IEB and through the way we approach it in Bryan and Bryan inspections, and hopefully that'll bring some value to you. And I want to change your mindset a little bit in how we approach when we ask questions. And you'll see what I mean about that in a few minutes, because sometimes we look at questions the wrong way and we seek answers the wrong way. And a lot of times it's seeking for a specific question to be answered, rather than pulling a little further back from your organization with a higher level question that gets to the deeper root of maybe the struggle or the challenge that you have. And here's a great example. This is from James Williams. James, thank you for this question. And this is probably in the top 3 questions we always get. And the James Williams question is, inspector competition, how do you pay an inspector? And so the question is kind of, what do you pay an inspector? For a multi-inspector firm, if you're paying an inspector, what do you pay them? Do I pay them, hourly? Do I pay them per transaction? Do I pay them a percentage? Do I pay them a salary plus commission? Man, there are a lot of different ways of paying an inspector. And this is a great example of taking a question and pulling back and putting on a CEO hat, or your business owner hat. The first question you ask is not how much do I pay an inspector. Okay, it's a great question, but that's probably not the deeper question. The deeper question is, if I were to take my business model, and we're going to start with one premise, which is the IEB business model and the Bryan and Bryan business model. There are 3 divisions within your company. You have your operations, your growth division, which some people refer to as marketing, but it's a growth division, and you have your services division. Now, if you notice, we don't refer to we don't have an inspectors division. We have a services division. That's because we may have more than one service outside of just residential inspections within that division. So we have operations, growth, and servicing. Servicing is any of the services out in the field, any type of inspection, that type of thing. Growth is any marketing or growth activities that you take. And operations is anything that's not any of the other 2. That's your human resources. Maybe it's your call center. It's your payroll, handling a number of things that are outside of that. So the first thing you need to understand is you don't start with how much I pay an inspector. We start with, what is a profitability model for my company? If you were to go into any industry in the world, there are kind of standards in which, if I were to buy a McDonald's franchise, and if I were to buy a transmission shop, or whatever service industry, there are certain ranges of costs within each department or each division within that industry. The one thing that's so ironic, and I'll get to the answering the question, but you really need to understand this. It's so ironic in our industry is, and I've been guilty of it, we think somehow that home inspectors and the home inspection business is so unique to any other industry. Every time we would deal with a crisis or a situation or formulating something. It's like, well, it's kind of different in the home inspection industry than this. It's like, no, it's not. Business is business in business. And in business, you have different departments or different divisions, and you have costs associated with those divisions, and you have to build a profitable model. So to answer James Williams' questions of how do you pay your inspector, it's the compensation range, the total compensation range that fits within my profitability model. So what that looks like is there are some people who their inspectors are contract workers, where they get a flat fee of 30%, 40%, 50%, whatever it is. Don't get hung up on the number. Some inspection companies tell me, well, I pay my guys 35%. I pay my guys 40%. And about 6 or 8 months ago, we put out a cost calculator, and it's actually on the IEB website. You can download the cost calculator. We actually put in the true cost of your inspector. And what they found was, as the members in IEB, who were the first ones to use this, they found that 35% inspector was actually running closer to maybe 42, 43, some up over 50%. In Bryan and Bryan inspections, it's a little bit different, because not in our what we pay, but our entire compensation model, we pay a percentage of the inspection, but we also have copay on health insurance. We have 401k matching on retirement. We have company vehicles. We pay for fuels. We provide all of the tools, all of the training. And all these things are cost points that we have to calculate in to the entire compensation model. Now, personally, I believe if you were to scale out a large inspection company, if you start getting over 40 to 45% in total cost in your servicing division, not your inspector, individual, but your whole servicing division, your margins are going to get very, very tight on profitability. And that's working within an economic model. So we don't look at it on how much we pay an inspector. We look at it stepping back, and what is the total compensation cost to run our entire inspection division. So you may be asking, well, what other costs are there other than paying for your inspector? Well, this is where you can make a big mistake. As you grow in a company like a company our size, we have to have somebody manage the inspection division or the services division. And so now if you bring that person in-house, that's a non-revenue generating position. So we have to have enough profitability to be able to pay for that position as well within that division. So I hope that answers your question. And really my goal was to get you to look at the question a little bit differently, not so much from, the giving you an actual number, but for you to walk through the kind of the mindset of how do I calculate what I'm coming through, the way I need to approach this from a business model standpoint. So it's determining what the total cost, and there's a lot of variables that go into that, and we go really deep into that in IEB. But that's probably the cleanest answer I can give you. So let's move along in these questions. The next question is, I love this. And this is from Brendan. Yeah, I wrote over your name. Brendan, one struggle I often hear from multi-inspectors is the challenge of hiring additional inspectors with the knowledge and skill to do the job competently. What type of characteristics do you believe make a good home inspector candidate? So the essence of the question is, what do you look for in how you find a competent or really good hire for a home inspector? Man, that is one of my favorite questions, because that is one of the absolute focuses, not only in IEB, but that absolutely changed my entire company, was understanding how to identify, select, recruit, and train talent into your organization. Now, for those of you, if there's any of that, and I have a difficult time reading the screen, but any of the IB members know who've gone through our RSTM training that's actually like a 6-day, this is a 6-day conversation, highly intensive, all day long conversation. The short answer is this. I'll give you a little bit of background because it's one of the greatest lessons I've learned in life. In my first life, I was in the restaurant business. I actually ran restaurants. I was a restaurant turnaround guy, anywhere from high-end dinner houses to fine dining. That was my niche. And so I was recruited to go to a restaurant in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was these guys that run American Express Restaurateurs of the Year, and they flew me out to their restaurant. This is in the 80s. Flew me out 2 or 3 times for interviews, and I was talking to the chef at Commander's Palace out in New Orleans to come with me and all this stuff. And I'll never forget, I was a young guy, and I was with the owner of this business who had just, had an offering for like $60 million for his, and he said, I was talking, I really wanted this job. And I was saying, well, I know this system and I'm really good at this skill. And he looked at me and said, you know what, Greg, I don't care. We don't hire the experience as much as we hire the person. That's the short answer to what am I looking for top talent as inspectors. Our first criteria, ironically, and for those of you who are really hung up on the technician side of it, don't hyperventilate before I answer this question fully. I'm not looking for the most skilled inspector or even anybody who has building experience. I'm looking for somebody that is coachable, is trainable, has humility, is a great communicator, is a team player, has vision for their life, is encourager. So there's a number of, it has a great moral fiber, is honest, high integrity. Those are the characteristics I'm looking for in a hire. The characteristics I'm looking for and that we profess in IEB as a hire cuts across all areas of your company, not just inspectors. We tend to focus on, I'm hiring a need for a highly skilled technician, so I'm gonna focus on a technician. Well, let me tell you something. If you're playing long ball, you can take somebody who doesn't have a lot of technical experience and invest. Sure, it's going to be an extra investment, extra time investment, extra money investment. But if you can invest in them and they can win on they check off all the other boxes, you will have an absolute superstar. I have an entire organization of absolute superstars because they hit on those things. And some came and we're a licensed state, some came with licenses, some were highly experienced, some guys were baristas, some guys did, worked in the car industry, some were home builders. So but they all met that basic requirement of mine of the personal attributes. And then we teach the skills. And some guys are ready to ramp up in 60 days. Some guys are 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months. And so in many times, because of our willingness to invest into people, we can transform people's lives where they're making more money than they've ever made in their life. Job security, we know what they want, and we're not just knocking out so much potential talent because they don't have experience in home building or in the trades. Now, for you technicians, who are still wearing your technician hat rather than your business owner hat, I will put the technical aptitude of my guys up against anybody. Because yes, we bring them up to a high level of technical aptitude. All I'm saying is it takes a little bit longer sometimes for the right person. So that's a great question, Brennan. So how do you get talent? You first figure out what it is you want for your company, what you want your people to stand for, what is your moral fiber, what is your moral compass, and are they teachable, trainable, humble, and those other things. You'll find some amazing people coming on board, okay? Let's see, Mike Me Too working here. I'm just checking some of these. Okay. Now let's go to the next question. Okay, I love this one. This is from David Crow. In a market, okay, and this is really common. because we heard this. I hear this on phone calls. I hear this from inspectors from different markets. I had a long conversation with an inspector in New York recently, in New York City. And in a market overrun with too many home inspectors, how to increase your inspection volume to a level high enough to support a second inspector? Now I'm gonna translate this question. I've got too much competition. I'm going to assume that I've got so much competition, so many inspectors in my market that it's hard to build enough business or to hire people. And how many of you, and just think about this, how many of you think that you in your market, there's a dense proportion of home inspectors that's more dense? You have more competition than other companies. How many inspectors out here tonight think that you have more competition than in other markets around the country? Greg, you just don't understand. And I'm in kind of in a small market, and you don't understand what it is to compete. Or Greg, I'm in a non-licensed state, and anybody can be an inspector. Greg, I'm in a big market, and there's just guys all over the place. I can't compete. Greg, there's so many inspectors out here that there's just bottom feeders that just charge $150 inspection. I just can't compete. How many of you struggle with those thoughts? Because I'm about to either make you angry, I'm going to upset you, I'm going to doink you in the eye, or I'm going to challenge your limiting beliefs, which is what I really hope I do, is challenge your limiting beliefs. I'm in the greater Houston area, which is a pretty darn big market, one of the biggest in the United States. Do you think we have a lot of competition? I'll answer that, yes. A tremendous amount of competition. Just in my little city, the little city I'm in, I'm in a bedroom community of Houston. Just in my little, 100,000, there's about 100,000 people in my little city. There are 60 inspectors. 60 inspectors in my little city of 100,000 people. The first question you have is not how can I compete with all this competition when it just seems like they're undercutting me, and the competition is growing by the day. That's not the right question. Remember, one of my challenges to you in through IEB is I'm gonna hopefully by the time we get done with this call is you'll look differently in how you ask questions and look at the way you seek answers. Where I'm going to challenge you, if any of you sitting here watching this tonight are struggling with looking at the number of inspectors coming to your market, being frustrated with that, fixated on that, fixated with people who aren't charging very much, they're undercutting you, so you're challenging with this, then here's what I'm going to challenge you. What exactly are you doing to invest in yourself, in your time, and your focus to become a better business owner, a better leader, get better vision for your business, for your life, and where that you can wake up every single day and say, I have done every single thing I can do to build a better business. And if you can't answer in the affirmative that you've done that every single day, and while you're worrying about your competition, then I will really challenge you. If you were sitting here with me, I would really challenge you and walk you through your mindset of being a business owner. How many of you saw the picture? It was great with Michael Phelps, the swimmer, when he was going for a gold medal, and the guy next to him was swimming, like looking at him. That's the guy that's always in second, is looking at the competition. We ran a survey in IEB. We ran a survey of home inspectors, and this was an interesting result that we received. The question was, how many books? What's the size of your business in revenue, and how many books a year do you read? And for all the inspection companies that were under 200,000, I believe it's 200 or 250,000 a year in gross revenue, They average reading, I think, 0 to 3 books a year. I believe that's a car, something like that. About 0 to 3 books a year. The inspection companies that averaged over $1.5 million a year in revenue to $2 million, I think it's $1.5 million, they averaged 13 books a year. And it was very, very consistent. You're going to see a common thread of people who succeed at the highest level, of them pouring into themselves and learning and growing, rather than the guys on the bottom who are constantly chirping about competition, focusing on what everybody else is doing rather than focusing on the important things in their own business. So I really want to challenge you in that. Let's see. Outstanding. Paul's at 1.5 books already this year. Always be recruiting. Yep. So, in that constant learning, you're always asking yourself, you're always challenging yourself in the way you do things. Your mind is getting sharper. I challenge the people within my organization. Are they learning based? Are they interested? Are they curious? And if they're not, they're probably not a fit within my organization. So I'm really going to challenge you to really focus on pouring into yourself. We had a really cool, this kind of goes to the heart of this question of competition. And we had an IEB mastermind group here, and for something for fun, I brought in a panel of top realtors in the Houston area. And we're having another mastermind next in February, I'll tell you about, where we're going to be bringing in some top realtors, hopefully in the state and possibly in the nation, to sit on a panel for a Q&A with the inspectors. And what I wanted the inspectors to go through was, we all sit back here as home inspectors and say, I think this is the value that I bring. I wanted them to hear from these top producing realtors, what is the real value they look for? Because some of the inspectors were chirping about, how do you compete on price and this and that? And something that stunned me, that absolutely stunned me, and this kind of goes to the heart of some of the other questions we're about to go to, is my inspection business and others like mine, on average, we're $200 more than many of our competitors. $150 to $200 more, and our goal is over 6,000 inspections this year. How does that correlate with all this competition I have? Because we focus on what we do and do it very well. I don't care what my competitors do. I don't care if my competitors buy this product from this vendor because it's good for them. It may be, I don't know, but I'm going to determine if it's a good fit for me. If it's going to actually add value to my company. And if it doesn't, then I don't do it. I don't care what my competitor is doing. I'm focusing on my profitability, my success, my stability, all the developmental things within my company, okay? So let's move on to some other really great questions. Okay, well, there's a couple of really good ones. How should I take these in order? Ooh, Phil Wise. Phil, I love this question, and hopefully I can answer it to everybody's satisfaction. How is your program, meaning I'm assuming IEB, how is your program different from other big home inspector coaching programs or home inspector coaching companies? How is your program different from other? Well, first, I can't speak to other coaching companies because we don't monitor other coaching companies. I've participated in other organizations in the past, had made some amazingly great relationships that I have to this day. And the relationships really brought so much value to me and continue to this day. Here's what I can tell you that we do know about the industry. And again, I can't speak for everybody, so I'm not stepping on anybody's toes because it's certainly out of ignorance, but I can tell you what we do. In IEB, we step back and we take a holistic approach to leadership development at the highest level. And we teach leaders, which is you as business owners, to not only be a leader, but to develop other leaders within your company. And even if you're a one-person shop, you need to start learning these qualities now, because as you bring the next person in, they have to develop leadership qualities, right? So that's one part of it. The other part of it is we don't talk about businessy things. We don't talk about, here's a product or a service we want to sell you, and here's a little bit of business stuff. We are completely business focused. And what that means is, let's take one of the number one questions I get is, are you going to talk about marketing? Are you going to coach marketing? That's a great question. And my response is, well, what do you mean by that? Well, are you going to teach us marketing? Because that's the word. Are you going to teach us marketing? Well, I say, well, okay, first, marketing is only one part of your business. We're not going to focus on how to do on specific marketing activities necessarily, in just focusing on growth, unless you understand the cost of your activities and the return on the investment if it's profitable. That's the most important thing to us. So when you say, okay, are you going to focus on marketing? My question is, are you talking about prospecting? Are you talking about branding? Are you talking about relationship building? Are you talking about acquisition? Are you talking about retention? You see, all of those are components of growth. So we say, yes, what we do is we will focus, part of our discussion in IEB is we focus on how to develop a growth division within your company, to where every action that you take, you learn how to measure that action to see if it's profitable and effective. Because what we've seen historically in our business is we hear that this guy over here is doing this gal over here is doing this company over here is doing this, and they're growing, so I must do all of those things. So now I'm doing 20 things, and I'm growing, so these 20 things must be working. Well, what we say is, well, why don't we step back and test each one of these 20 things, because it may be, your success may be 2 of those 20 things. So 18 of the things you're doing is wasting money, time, resources, and energy. You don't have to do those things, so you can have higher profit, maximize your resources, and be more effective in your growth division, rather than I'm doing marketing so we can grow, so we can say we've got this size company in revenue, but all of those companies that say, what is your profitability? None of them can answer me. That's the difference in IEB that I've seen in the industry, because there was never a full-fledged, holistic approach that marketing, technician, and operations are all 3 key components of running a healthy, successful, sustainable company. So, I'm not really going to spend a lot of time getting into the value propositions of IEB. That's really not the purpose of this call today in this conversation, but I just wanted to touch on that. So let's get back to the questions. How are we doing? We're doing pretty good on time. Let's see. Brock asked the question, and this is similar to hiring, how you hire people. How do you hire inspectors that will take the same care that you would? What do you look for? Well, a couple of things. The first thing you need to understand is that very rarely will anybody care about your business as much as you care about your business. That's a truthism. But if you're a business owner and you care completely about the people that come into your organization and what they want out of life, what's important to them, and you can help them achieve that, and you create a vision, like if I have a big vision over my head, if I said, okay, this is my vision, and somebody can come into my organization And they have a vision for their life as well. And if their vision can fit within my vision, then we're probably going to have a lot of success together. But the minute their vision grows and expands beyond my vision, there's going to be a disconnect. There's not going to be an alignment anymore. There's going to be a little bit of a misalignment. So the first thing I would say is, how do you get people to care for you is that you have a vision for your life and business, and that incorporates the vision for your employees' life and business, where they can fulfill all the things they want within your organization, and they can grow with you. The second part is, as I mentioned, it's standard how you hire anybody. We hire great people. We're not hiring great inspectors. We make great inspectors. We hire great people. We hire great administrators. We hire great office people. We hire great growth people. We teach them the system, okay? And then finally, that gets to the next part of it is, once you hire these people, how do you maintain consistent quality within your organization? And man, that is where so many companies fail, is on the quality standpoint, because here's also a truthism. And I'll keep it specifically to inspectors, because most of y'all can relate to that. When I inspect houses, I add another inspector, and I can probably pretty consistently maintain the consistency and quality of my service. I add a third inspector, and there's a chance that consistency and quality may start to fall off a little bit. Well, you start to get to 15, 18, 20, 22, 25 inspectors. Now you're starting to get some real distance between you as this like superstar that built the reputation of your business, and this 24th or 25th person, or even 5th or 6th person. So what do? That's where amazing leadership is so important. And for us, we have a really intense quality control measure. We incentivize behavior. As an organization, and this is where, we in IEB and Bryan, we talk about systems, processes, and models. Our model requires that we have a very measurable and very open, high bar of expectations to be within our organization. Because anything you accept that's below your high expectations, your standards. If you say, I have high standards, but you accept this from one of your employees, this isn't your standard, this is your standard. We don't accept anything below our high standards. And that requires a lot of focus, a lot of clarity. Building out quality control measures, like in IEB, we share how we our quality control measures within IEB, within Bryan Inspections. We share that, how we maintain, how we have, team meetings, leadership meetings to ensure that we're maintaining those standards, okay? Theme, how do I get more inspections? What is the best way? Tom Novak, I love your question. What is the best way to increase home inspections? Javier, how can I get more inspections a week? I'm averaging 15 a month since last April. Let's see. Keith, how do you target market to ensure consistent work, growth, and profitability? Great question. And I really love, Keith, I love the way you put it. How do you target market to ensure consistent work, growth, and profitability? And the reason I love the way Keith put it is, you notice he connected growth with profitability. Because what we've seen, and I'll say this over and over again, is a lot of growth activities that are not built around high profitability. They're just spending. We've had companies in here who are spending as much as 50% of their growth revenue on marketing activities. That's because they've invested in this product, their competitors doing this, they're running all these routes and doing all this stuff, and bop, 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 bop. Next thing you know, they don't have any money. Now, what I want you to hear in this, as I listed those things that they're doing, some of those may be really, really effective, but I don't know. But what I discover is when I talk to these people, they don't know what's effective either because they're just doing what everybody's telling them to do, but they don't have any measure to determine if it's profitable. And so I'll give you a real life scenario and this was an eye opener for me probably 4 or 5 years ago. I was approached by a guy who runs a successful inspection company in the DFW market. And he said to me, they do a lot of presentations in real estate offices. And again, I'm not saying whether that's good or bad. Okay, I'm not taking a position on that. But their whole model was getting into offices and getting a lot of presentations, and that's where the measure of success was. We got into this many, we went to this many offices, and we got this many presentations. But I don't feel it's that effective because we're spending a lot of money on these presentations, but we don't seem to be growing. And remember how I started tonight? And I said, be careful how you answer questions, step back, and you learn to formulate higher level questions or thoughts. Well, we've never, the core of what we do in our growth division is not that. But I'm hopefully I'm wise enough, and I to not say, and I was wise enough, I believe, not to say, well, you do it different than us, therefore we're smarter than you, and what you're doing is stupid, because that wasn't the case. I actually listened to what he said, and I pondered that for about 3 months. They're running all these routes, getting into all these offices, and I know some companies that do that are highly successful and profitable. And they were getting a lot of presentations in front of a lot of offices and sitting in front of feeding a lot of realtors, and sometimes having 50, 60, 70 realtors at these things. But they didn't feel like they were that profitable, which they weren't. So I looked at it, and finally after 3 months, I realized they are measuring something. They're measuring the number of routes they are running and the number of presentations they're doing. But for me, that was the wrong measure. The measure is, how much am I spending per office visit? How much am I spending per presentation? And what am I actually capturing out of that presentation? And so this transitions into the mindset of my business and even an IEB. Running routes, doing some of these activities, there is, I believe, some great value in that. If you can measure it and understand what your return on investment is, rather than this shotgun spitballing approach to growth. We focus a lot on a program called 5x5, which we teach in detail in IEB. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that before we end our conversation tonight. But I spend a lot of time identifying the top 20% producers in our marketplace. That's who I'm going after, because here's a little bit of inside baseball. If you go to an office and you're buying lunch for 50 realtors, those aren't the 50 that are producing much. Those are the 50 that are eating your lunch because they're not out selling. The top producers are out selling. They're not interested in your lunch, and they're certainly not interested in what you have to say about how great you are as an inspector. We're not that special. Now, will I buy a lunch? Absolutely. I buy lunches for top producing teams. But I focus on getting in front of top producers, having one-on-ones over a cup of coffee or a lunch or a meeting. And there's a whole process to that, which we just don't have enough time for tonight. It's simple. It's not easy. But if you're willing to take the time to learn it and implement it, it's very powerful. And we had one of our inspection companies that is actually a member in IEB, Rob Michelle Hopkins, who actually became partners in IEB. They implemented this program, and they were skeptical about it, just like I was, and it had to do with prospecting and getting in front of realtors who had never heard of them before, or maybe had heard of them but never used them. In a 6-month period, they captured 32 top realtors in their marketplace And out of that result, in just a 6-month period, an additional, I believe, 340, 360 inspections, and their cost was probably under $1,000. And regardless of whether that 1,000 is right, I don't know. I know I'm in the ballpark. Is they could actually measure it. They could measure their cost for their direct production numbers. And they were capturing the top people, not only that for that 340 inspections they got, but these were top producers who were going to give them, on average, between 5 and 20 inspections a year. See how that works? See the power in that? So the short answer, we could spend literally days and days on marketing philosophy, growth strategies, the differences between retention and between acquisition, because those are two completely different conversations. Retention is maintaining the relationship with your realtors and working on that. Acquisition is the cost of going out and acquiring new people, which when acquisition is much more expensive than retention. And so if I know I'm going to purposely go out for acquisition, I know I'm going to have to invest more time and money, but I know the payoff's going to be big in capturing market share. Those are the type of things that we talk about in IEB. It's just a higher level conversation. So I'm looking at a couple of notes. Would you recommend an outside advertising agency rather than an employee to run marketing? Crystal, that's a good question. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. You can reach out to us, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about that, because some that may be for social media platform, for actually doing, if you're doing prospecting calls. A lot of times when you're a smaller operation, it makes more sense to outsource things rather than taking on the cost of bringing people in-house. So there's a lot to unpack, and that's a great question, but there's a lot to unpack with that. So reach out to us through iebcoaching.com, and I'll personally get back with you, and we can have a dialogue about that. But I'm never opposed to outsourcing as opposed to taking things in-house. You just have to look at the cost calculus and whether you can afford to bring somebody in full-time as they're getting traction, building out a program. Christo, looking to hire first employee this year. Hey, Christo, thank you. Looking to hire my first employee. We talk about this, a new conversation in the industry. Let me blow your mind. You already have your mind just blown? The number one question in our industry for inspectors going from one inspector to a multi-inspector is the chicken or the egg question. Who do I hire first? Do I hire an inspector first or a marketing or growth person first? Inspector over here, growth person here. Have to have an inspector to handle the growth, have to have growth to hire the inspector, right? That's pretty tough. That's a pretty tough question to answer. The mind-blowing answer is neither. Yeah, I said it. And for those of you who are monitoring this call, yeah, I said that. We believe that it's neither. And I'm going to give you the answer, but I don't have enough time to give you the whys. The answer to that is, and I'll tell you where to get the whys in just a second, but the answer to that is you don't hire your first inspector or your first growth person first. You hire your operations person first. And for those of you saying, no way, dude, you got to have an inspector. You got to hire well, I'm not going to argue with you tonight. I'm just going to say that if you want to succeed, you're going to hire your operations person first. But I don't have the money. How do I hire an operations person? I don't have the money to pay for that person and this and that. I get it. I've been there. I was a one-man shop for 10 years by choice. But there is an answer to that. But I just wanted to quickly blow your minds that it's not a chicken or the egg. It's something else, the rooster or whatever the funny answer to that is. Let's see. Okay, Paul answered my question. What's the difference? IEB talks business and teaches how to succeed. Others tell us how they can help us by buying their products. Yeah, I don't want to go there.
There was that question about how do you deal with the tire kickers?
Oh, yeah. We had a question, and I don't have this from, how do you deal with tire kickers? And I don't know what that means. I'm going to assume it's on price shoppers. So Kari, who's sitting with me, Kari said that there was a question that came across. I didn't see it on my list of how do you deal with tire kickers? Who's that from, Kari? From Chuck. Chuck sent the answer. How do you deal with tire kickers? I'm going to assume that tire kickers are price shoppers. And I love that question because that gets to the heart of we are, like I mentioned, my company, we're more expensive than most and we're bigger than most. Kind of ironic, right? And what's interesting is my number one competitor in my market, who's a good friend of mine, is we're about the same size company. He's more expensive than I am. Weird, huh? Well, if you're dealing on price, you will lose on price every time. If you're dealing on price, you will lose on price every time. It's a value proposition. You're speaking value. I had and here's what value looks like. I had an IT guy coming into my house. We haven't had a TV in my house for like 20 years. And my wife is finally putting a TV because we're putting like the Alexa, everything. It's a fully automated. And there's an IT guy who's like this brilliant mind, and he fully automates like really big houses. Now we don't have a really big house, but like these multi-million-dollar house, he does like fully automates the kind that you see like on on these futuristic shows. He does all that. And it's funny because he says, Greg, I'm not a salesman at all. If you look at the guy, he's not a salesman. He's like a technology guy, like a techno geek. Brilliant mind. But he upsells everything. By the time he's done, you want to buy every piece of equipment because all he doesn't talk about price. He doesn't talk about anything. He just talks about the value proposition. If you buy this piece of equipment, it's going to be better because of this and this and this and this and this. Now, if you want to learn a couple of small steps on how to overcome tire kickers, like in our inside sales team, which is our call center, we take our calls in-house. Okay, some of you do, some of you don't, some of you outsource, some of you handle your own calls. We actually have scripting for every single situation that can come up, and one of those is overcoming price objections through value. And everybody that handles the phones for us has to get certified. They get certifications on every one of these scripts. So they're like price objection certified. They actually get certified, and they get certified in sewer cam sales and how they explain the value of having a sewer cam, the value of having thermal imaging, the value of this, the value of that, not the price of it, the value to the consumer of the protection to them for the investment they're about to make. So it's always, for tire kickers, you have to learn through script, implement within your company strong scripting, and more than strong scripting, it's an internalization of the value proposition of what you bring. When we hire new people that are answering the phones, they spend a week out in the field with our inspectors so they can walk back and say, oh my gosh, you guys are amazing, the things that you do, the value proposition of this buyer benefit thing, and this that you provide, and this you provide, and all this, and it's really cool. And we don't outsource to third-party vendors any products or services. It's all in-house. But that's what works for us. I have some people in IEB who have a lot of outsourced third-party value propositions that they do very well with. But they know it works for them, and we know it works for us, but we are very confident in what the value proposition is. So we're buttressing up. I'm checking to see if there's any questions. Thank you, Christo, for those questions, by the way. Before we go, I want a couple of announcements. First, thank you so much for the questions tonight. Those were really great questions. I hope you got some value. I hope you understand a little bit more about what IEB is about. Something that we've never done before in IEB is a few times a year we have events for IEB called Rapid Growth Training, where you can come in. It's a 2.5-day intensive business building training events. Those are open to non-members. They just you buy a ticket and you come to the event. But for the first time ever, and the time is very short on this, but we're just the event is just about full, but I really want you to know about it. On February 7th and 8th, we're having our first mastermind group of the year for IEB members. For the first time ever, we're allowing non-members to participate. And for IB members, it's free. Non-members do have to pay, but you have access to being in the same room with inspection companies that are your size, ranging from 1 to 2 inspectors to 25 to 30 inspectors. And over 2 days, we have a couple of amazing keynote speakers from outside the industry. We have high-level panels on everything from social media, how to expand your social media base, to the husband-wife dynamic in partnership in building your business, to the 5x5 coaching. We talked about this. How do you generate more business for your company? We go deep into the number one thing that drives success for most of the IEB members, including my company that helped us go to a multi-million-dollar company. We go deep into that in a breakout session. So it's 2 solid days of intensive panels, coaching, keynote speakers, and you have about 8 breakout sessions to choose from that fit where you're at. We go into the profitability model of building your inspection business from a one-man shop to multiple inspector firm, how you compensate different positions within your company, how you build a compensation model, how you budget and work on a chart of accounts starting when you're small, how you put together an organizational chart for growth. This is going to be the most powerful event we've ever done, and you have access to it. And for those of you who participated tonight, we're going to send over a link for you to take a look at it. But I will tell you, it's going to fill up. It's almost full, but I felt it was important that I let you know about it, because these topics tonight, every single one of these topics, we go into great detail at the IEB Unite. So I hope to see you there. For those of you who have additional questions, just reach out to IEB Coaching. Either I will reach out to you, or one of the other partners will reach out to you, or my director of operations, my vice president, Brian. There's a number of resources that can have a continued conversation with you about IEB or things within your business. I think that's about it. Kari, have I covered everything?
Got it.
All right, man. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I apologize for any technical glitches. This is the first time we've done a Q&A on multiple platforms, and I hope you got some value. Send us some feedback. We always love feedback, positive feedback, things you'd like for us to improve on. Thank you so much, and y'all have a great night. Hope to see you at IEB Unite in February 7th and 8th. Take care.